Yeah, I did. We'll be starting in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. My name is Bertha Tobias and I will be your moderator for today's discussion right here from the COVID-19 Communication Center. Our sign language interpreter for today is Erika Ushona as we unpack a very important discussion about higher education and the preparedness of higher education institutions for academic activities. Now, unfortunately, we do not have a health update at this stage. It will be delivered to the nation later during the day. So today, if you watched yesterday's discussion, you'll understand that we are currently concerned with the objective of determining how prepared institutions of higher education are in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. So to that effect, we are joined by our panelists here today. We have Dr. Leticia Kotze, who is the head at the Business School of Excellence. We are also joined by Ms. Lana Kalitz, who is the head at the Institute of Open Learning. We are also joined by Mr. Tilengi Andima, who is the Assistant Dean at Boto Higher Education Institution. And we are also joined by Dr. Lindsay Vandenberg, who is the Principal at Head Start Montessori Training College, and she is joining us on the line. Now to our panelists, good morning, welcome, thank you for being here. Now it is important, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our discussion, to understand exactly what kinds of institutions are represented. And we acknowledge that all institutions of higher education and formal education in general have respective strategic objectives. So on that note, I'm going to ask that Dr. Kotze, you please start us off and tell us exactly what are the academic focuses and what are the strategic objectives of the Business School of Excellence.
Let's just clarify something. We are a franchisee of a South African company, Open Learning Group. So with the lockdown currently in place still, we are still in the mode of what we did during the examination. We are a distance teaching education institution. So we are so used to the challenges like we have now, that it was like a very small transition for us to focus on the well-being of our students as well as our staff. So currently we are in total lockdown still. Immediately when the lockdown was announced, we stopped all classes on face-to-face communication and contact with our students. To us, it's very important that our students' safety, but as well as the support and assistance continues throughout. And like I say, we are so used to this distance teaching mode that the transition was very small, so we could continue with the support and assistance that we've been giving in the past. I myself, as head of academics, and then we have a student support manager at BSE here in Namibia. We do daily support of our students still, but still if they need to communicate with anyone in South Africa, they can do it via us or directly on a forum, 24-hour forum that they have with Open Learning Group, as well as other students. On this forum, they can ask any examination, academic-related questions, or whatever they need to. Sometimes they just ask for marks. Sometimes they just ask for support. So they've got WhatsApp groups and face-to-face. Obviously, they form little study groups, but that's their own prerogative. So to us, it's very important that our students' well-being is looked after in this very trying time.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Kotze. Now, Ms. Kalitz, could you please talk to us about what is the mission, what is the ethos, what is the general spirit of the Institute of Open Learning?
Thank you, moderator. The Institute for Open Learning is also a distance education, accredited distance education institution that was established in 1995. We registered 60,000 students since inception. Currently, we have about 21,000 active students. About 8,000 of those students study towards academic qualifications. We offer qualifications mainly in teaching from NQF level 5 to 8, from certificate to degree level, honors degree level. We also offer policing qualifications as well as ICT courses.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Andima, could you please talk to us about the strategic objectives of the Boto Higher Education Institution?
Thank you very much. Boto Higher Education Institution is a proud affiliate of Boto University, Botswana. And we are operating in 4 countries, Eswatini, Lesotho, Botswana, and Namibia, and we have operating with 6 campuses. 6 campuses in the sense that we have 2 campuses in Botswana, in Gaborone, and in Francistown, in Eswatini and Lesotho, and now also Namibia. And the 6th one is the virtual campus that we have, the distance learning mode. In Namibia, we have got programs in the Faculty of Business Accounting and Faculty of Computing, as well as Health and Education Management. We are gradually entering Namibia, and therefore the other programs will continue as we grow. Our strategic objective is to align our programs with the developmental program and the initiative of growth at home program. So we are aligning our educational programs towards the policies and programs of the country to ensure that there is sustainable development that is taking place in the country.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Andima. Now, it's important that we've already established the premise for that. We understand exactly what are the institutions that are represented here today. And now we can get into the technicalities of our conversation, right? What exactly, how ready are you? And perhaps, Dr. Kotze, we'll just start with you again. Can you talk to us about institutional readiness in terms of compliance with COVID-19 regulations, classrooms, lecture halls, libraries, and everything at the Business School of Excellence?
Okay, let's just start again from the beginning. We are really actually a very small company, but we have a big foot in Namibia. We've been operating for the last 10 years already, basically focusing on the logistics programs, but then now we are looking into widening into the W&R fields. But that being said, I think we've always been ready. Because we are so used to this distance teaching mode, we are, when students do come in, they have to follow the normal protocol and directives of sanitizing. They have to wear masks. They have to sign in the register. And then they go to the students' manager's office, and then one-on-one, they can wait for a one-on-one, which she will then support them. Like I say, we also are focusing on certificates, diploma and degrees in the logistics field at this point in time. And yeah, we are absolutely ready. We've actually always been ready. The moment we heard about the lockdown again on the side, we rerouted our telephones to be able to have the students give the opportunity to talk to the student affairs manager or the lecturer or the facilitators. So I think we are on that basis. Obviously, because they are afraid of coming in, they do come in one-on-one, so they're not big groups, never ever. Like we say, we've stopped the classes immediately. And so it's not like, we don't have any libraries. We advise the students to use the online library like Google Scholar, for instance. We don't have laboratories or any big facilities that they utilize. So we're not very concerned with that at this point in time.
All right. And Ms. Callis, could you talk to us about the technical and pragmatic readiness of the Institute of Open Learning to deal with COVID-19?
Yes, IOL is in a very fortunate position that we're also a distance education institution, which makes it very easy for us. Basically, the only place where we were really affected was with the examinations, because the students do have to sit down for examinations. And we've got 19 examination venues across the country. And then the other part that was really affected was the practical part of the qualifications, which is the school-based studies, where the students actually have to go to schools and do their practical. But we don't have face-to-face classes, lecturers. So we do pre-recorded contact or pre-recorded classes that we load onto our YouTube channel, and the students have a student portal where once they register, everything is available for them. So I can agree. Distance education is much easier when it comes to this pandemic. I think it affected us less than the full-time institution.
Right. And Mr. Andima, do you share the same sentiments, or is it any different for the Boto Higher Education Institution?
Yes, with Boto Institute for Higher Education, we have got both. We have got a distance program as well as a face-to-face program. And as soon as the COVID-19 was announced, we followed the guidelines provided by the Ministry of Health and Social Services, as well as the guidelines of WHO, and the guidelines that have come from our own parent university. So we have implemented that and started sharing information immediately with the learners, with our students. We stopped the face-to-face conduct and continue with the online teaching. We are using the Blackboard as our technology platform for delivery of educational material as well as the learning and teaching both. We use a technology called Blackboard. And we are also keeping in touch with our students through all the social media programs that are available. And what we did was also to put up information outlets and brochures for students and in the walls of our classrooms and all the libraries, and we have sanitized and disinfect the whole campus in our libraries, in our labs, and every 3 hours we go ahead with the cleaning when they receive the students. When the face-to-face classes started, we have introduced the new guidelines to the students, and we have also implemented a monitoring mechanism by appointing 2 compliance officers who are just coming in on the campus to look whether we are following the protocols as established. They come in unannounced, and they give the management a weekly report to see where we have to improve and what we are doing well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Andima. Now we do have Dr. van den Berg on the line. Dr. van den Berg, could you please tell us about what is the general spirit of Head Start Montessori Training College? What are the objectives? And then above and beyond that, could you tell us about how ready you are as an institution to continue learning successfully while still adhering to COVID-19 national regulations?
Thank you. We're in Walvis Bay. We're a very small private college in Walvis Bay. And of course, we still can't, basically we're still in lockdown. We recognize that this was a possibility right at the beginning of the year, so we were prepared ahead of time with our students. We normally have both a face-to-face and distance learning components because we only do teaching programs, and obviously with teaching programs you need to be shown how to do it. So what we were doing and what we have been doing and how we did prepare for this was we managed to do a lot of videos, professionally made videos to give to the students so they could see and hear. The one thing we didn't do, and we took advice from different universities around the world, and that was we didn't try and put lectures online because most students find that extremely difficult. So we went the micro lesson route, and we've been doing that weekly since the lockdown, and we can basically continue it as long as we need to. We're preparing for the worst scenario here in Walvis Bay, but praying for the best. And we want to give our students the best possible experience, that they'll come out of this thinking that they've actually gained rather than lost anything. So that's where Head Start is at the moment. We're still in lockdown. Our students are not coming. They're getting lessons weekly from all the trainers. We're in contact with them all the time. We've got WhatsApp groups. And yes, it's been an interesting experience, I think, for everyone.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. And then could you talk to us about the assessment methods that you've instituted at your institution during this time? Are they any different from the status quo, or have they remained the same? And can you tell us what those look like?
To a certain extent, they have changed. Obviously, we cannot bring students in to write exams. So for that reason, we have been giving, and we are going to continue giving, some open book exams, observational exercises, self-tests, anything that will keep the quality assurance of our programs up to standard, so that at the end of this sequence, our students will feel that and know that they have had the same quality as if they had been conducting their classes as usual.
All right. And Mr. Andima, how has assessment been at your institution?
Well, we have got, as I said, we have the blackboard that we are using as a technology. So students submit their assignments through the blackboard, and they receive their work also through the blackboard. So they are all connected. The connectivity is ongoing, and that's how assessments are being done. So the assessments have not been affected as such. We are on track, especially with our second-year learners. The first year was a little bit a problem to start, but we have finally taken off. Yeah.
All right. And Ms. Khalid's assessment at the head of open learning?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Like I explained, basically that is the part that was most affected by the pandemic when it came to IRL. So what we were supposed to write normally, because we deal with a lot of teachers and they working adults, they were supposed to write examination in the school holidays. So what we had to do was we had to move the examination. And then we had permission from the educational director to write in stage 4 of the lockdown restrictions. And then Irongo went under lockdown again, so we had to go back to the drawing board. And we also now, the students are currently busy with the off-site examination. So they will come and submit it actually tomorrow. So they do the examinations at home, and then they submit it with IRL. The challenge is, online assessment is very difficult because the students doesn't all have access to internet, and that in itself is a challenge when it comes to online assessment.
Right. And Dr. Kotze, is it any different at the Business School of Excellence?
Not in a big sense. I'd like to add what she says. There are technical issues and small things that you do have to reconsider. But because OLG, Open Learning Group, does have the infrastructure already in place, there was a very small change taking place. So let me just explain how it usually works, and then the small change that we adapted to accommodate our students. Usually, they have to submit one assignment. We have a learning management system called OLG for Me. I might add that this OLG for Me is also utilized by University of South Africa and University of Pretoria because it's a fantastic learning system. Sorry. So they can download assignment 1, which they then also resubmit online. It's marked online, and then they get the results back. Then they have to do an assignment 2, which in all modules is a multiple choice assignment. They go online on OLG for me. They access the questions, they answer them. As they answer them, they are marked immediately, so the results are available immediately. So this was done in the past. We continued with this like as is. Then the third, this is where the challenge started. We couldn't have the students sit in halls to write as we are used to, but what we decided is we stick to the exam timetable as is. The students got these assignments and the topics and the timetables already at the beginning of the year, before the lockdown was in place. But what we did, we took away the exam, we converted it to a third assignment. The third assignment was for 2 hours, usually the exam is 3 hours, 100 marks. We converted the assignment to 80 marks in 2 hours. Open book, like Dr. Lindsay said, open book also in Australia, but after 2 hours, the system just locked down, so you couldn't continue. Initially, we thought students would complain because of the difference of assessments, but overall, they really did excellently. And we hadn't, we've already given out the certificates to those who have passed the modules successfully, but before the examination, we decided, okay, let's take all the modules and put them into videos. So there were a lot of online, I'm going to just put this like this. There were a lot of online going on between the tutors and OLG particularly, to just have them get the modules changed digitally, and then put in videos. Normally, our students get a lot of notes and PowerPoints and videos online in any case. If they do struggle with the internet connectivity, they can come to our offices, which they didn't now. It seems that they were prepared, to have the internet connectivity, and they were prepared for this examination, and they did very, very well. We have already released the results without a lot of problems.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Now, Ms. Khaled, something important that you mentioned is the fact that not all students have access to the internet, which is a very important point of conversation for a discussion such as this one. So the question then becomes, what is your institution doing as an institution to deal with the socioeconomic disparities which exist between students? How are you equalizing that playing field and ensuring that no student is left behind?
Thank you. Yes. We try to give them equal opportunity. So we will not implement something that all students won't be able to do. So our students can register throughout the year. So a student, once he registers, he have access on his student portal, but he also receive a tool, a Kindle. So we give each and every student a tool. But I also have regional offices. We have 8 regional offices, and students can go to the offices. We've got student support resource centers at the offices, where there's internet access available. There's all the study material that they need is available at these centers, and they also we have a supervisor or a course coordinator available to assist these students at all our regional offices. So we won't expect these students to submit their assignments or the off-site examinations online. The students come into these 8 offices, or they courier their assignments or off-site exams to any of these offices.
Right. And Mr. Andima, could you talk to us about how Boto Higher Education Institution is going about dealing with those very relevant, very prevalent disparities?
Yes, fortunately for us at Boto, we are an organization that is driven by technology, and we operate more heavily with technology, and therefore at the beginning, once a student has secured funding for a scholarship in all the 6 campuses that I have indicated, they are provided normally with tablets, and with that tablets they can then do their homework and so on. So we did not have such a problem. The problem that we have encountered is for students who have, for example, in the first year, where they have been delayed there was delay in getting their scholarships approved or funding approved. Those are the people that were in a category of difficulties. But as soon as their funding has been secured, then you are provided with a tablet, and the tablet allows you to download all the materials that are on the blackboard, and you have access to the blackboard that I've indicated, to our e-library. And and that is the practice in all the 4 countries that we are operating in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andima. Dr. van den Berg, could you talk to us about how Head Start Montessori Training College is going about dealing with those disparities?
It's very interesting because we tend to deal with the older students at the college. So the majority of our students, when we started this, were not technologically advanced, and some of them were a little bit resistant, but we knew that everybody used technology in some way or other. We, at the beginning of the year, did a survey and found out that only 2 of our students did not have a cell phone, for instance, and the majority of them, something like 92%, actually had smartphones. So we used the technology that was available to start with. We put out the first lesson 3 weeks after lockdown, and we sent it out via WhatsApp to our students in the different cohorts. We also have learning platforms. 2 years ago, we started an actual online classes. So we had all these things available, but we realized that we couldn't force students, and we didn't want to leave any of our students behind. So we gave them options, and we used everything that was available, whether it be WhatsApp, whether it be SMSing, whether it be email, or getting them onto the actual learning platform that we utilize. These were all everybody had the same opportunity to choose one or other. But what we have noticed, interestingly, is the fact that most of those who started off only wanting their lessons via WhatsApp have moved on to using our learning platform because they have found it easier. So that in itself is a huge breakthrough, particularly for some of our, as I say, some of our older students who are studying for a second career. It has been an issue, the data, obviously. It costs money that they maybe didn't actually budget for. However, they are not coming to the college, so the money that they would have used for traveling and the safety issues around that has allowed them to use that money for data. So what happens is that we send them the lessons, all the lessons go out for every cohort on Fridays, and they often, and it has to go out before 12 midday, and so students will go and get extra data for that week. But it is an issue that we do have areas where it means that the student has to travel in from an outlying village where there is no connectivity into their nearest town so that they can download their lessons for that week. That's a problem that we struggle with here in Namibia, but it's one that I understand is being addressed, and eventually all our towns and cities will have free Wi-Fi's in city centres, so that will obviously be a help and an assistance to our students.
All right, thank you, Dr. van den Berg. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our lines are officially open for any questions, comments, or contributions. The number to call is 061-400-397. I'll say that again. The number to call to contribute, ask questions, engage is 061-400-397. In the meantime, Dr. Kotze, Could you tell us about how the Business School of Excellence is going about meaningfully acknowledging those differences in socioeconomic status?
Can you repeat that, please?
Could you tell us how the Business School of Excellence is going about meaningfully acknowledging the fact that not all students have access to online platforms that they need to learn properly?
Dr. van der Berg said something very important. Because of the less traveling, they were informed quite ahead of time, get enough data, which they definitely did, because we had little comments about not having enough data. In the first two e-learning sessions, what happened was some of them did have internet connectivity problems. What we did then is said, okay, we acknowledge this, give us send us an email or a WhatsApp or whatever, and we acknowledge that you experienced technical problems, and we gave them a second opportunity later in that month. But the second thing that was very important to us, if students felt, I couldn't continue with my studies, there was a lot of issues with the lockdown, what we did is you could make a decision as a student, nothing forceful, you can make a decision. Do you want to now sit for assignment 3 or for the examination as is, or would you like to stand over until the November examination when hopefully the lockdown would have been lifted? So we did consider all these issues as problematic, but like I say, the stuff just kind of sorted itself out.
All right. And then that also it trickles into our next question, right, regarding curriculum implementation and covering work. So, Mr. Andima, could you start us off and tell us how curriculum implementation has been going at Boto Higher Education Institution, and what mechanisms you've implemented to ensure that you get to cover the work that's been lost?
Yes, our programs accredited in the country of origin, which is Botswana, and acknowledged by Namibia Qualification Authority as such. And at the moment, they are considered like almost franchise programs. And the implementation is by faculty, and we did not have much of the hiccups because, as I said earlier, we are technologically inclined and we use technology a lot in terms of the implementation and the lectures that are going on. What was almost affected was the practical work, but as soon as the country got back into stage 2 or 3 there, we requested for permission to allow, because our numbers are small, to allow the students to come and do their practicals in small numbers. And because the distance also in our facilities, we can easily distance it so that they could come and do their practicals. So the lecturers are also not allowed to be on campus for too long. They just come and deliver their programs and so on. And those who can work from home are continuously working from home. So the delivery of the theoretical modules will be done remotely, and the practical ones can be done on campus. Right. And students who do not have the facilities or could not connect were permitted to come on campus one by one and do their practicals there.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Andima. Now we do have a caller on the line. We have Johanna from Oshikuku. Good morning and welcome, Johanna. Johanna, please go ahead.
Okay. Am I live?
Yes.
Live, right?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. No, I'm calling from Shikuku. I'm a student at IOL. I would like to ask Ms. Kawes that are there measurements or are there things put on measurement for us supposed to write or get examinations? So regarding now if the COVID-19 hasn't changed or no improvement, what are the plans and measurements they put for November examination?
All right. I believe that's a question that is specifically for Ms. Collins. What are the measurements in place to facilitate successful examination?
Yes, so like I explained previously, we couldn't write the April-May examination, so we did the off-site examinations. We're taking it day by day because, I mean, we cannot say what's going to happen in August and in November. So currently, our students will sit for examinations in November. So they were supposed to write August, the second semester examination. So we communicated to them that they will now sit for these August examinations in November. They already submitted their assignments to qualify for these examinations. So as things are now, we will sit for examinations in November. If anything changed, then we will, just like we did with the April-May examinations, we will definitely sit down and make decisions, and we will communicate with our stakeholders, make sure that our students, our student representative council, and all our regulators communicate and come up with the best solution.
All right, thank you, Ms. Khalid. I believe that answers Johanna's question effectively. Now, Dr. Kotze, could you talk to us about how the Business School of Excellence is going about curriculum delivery and how you are dealing with covering the work that's been lost?
I think I've covered that quite a lot this morning, in the sense that all the tutors work from home, remotely. In South Africa, they are really all still working remotely, but the telephones were rerouted to all these facilitators and tutors, staff members, as well as us. I mean, when the initial lockdown started, I went to the farm, but I worked from the farm as well. I mean, I was in daily contact with students, so no work was lost. So I think all our students are on par. Like I say, they've received their certificates already for those who have passed, and we could not see a big discrepancy in the pass rates if you compared it to past years. And like I say, we've been running these programs for 10 years, so I can make a comparison. At this point, nothing has been lost. I think we are in a good place.
All right.
But every day does have its challenges, but as we get challenges, we deal with it as quickly as possible.
All right. Dr. van den Berg, do you share the same sentiments with Head Start Montessori Training College, or could you talk to us about how you've been dealing with that?
I tend to agree with Dr. Kotze. I don't feel that we've actually lost any time with their studies. Our trainers, as soon as we realized we were going to go into lockdown, they sat and reorganized and reconfigured the lesson plans that they had so that we could finish each cohort each year at the end of the year, that we hopefully will not have to go into 2021. And this is important for our students in particular. As I've mentioned several times, our students are slightly older, and this is normally a second career for them. So they're anxious to get out there with their diplomas. The material we actually think is probably been, to the great extent, even better, because instead of students coming and listening to a lecture and going home and forgetting half of it, this way, because it's online, because they can go back to it many times, they can revise it, the PowerPoints are all narrated, the information stays there, it doesn't get removed. On the whole, we think we're doing quite a good job, and it'll be interesting to see when we do our end-of-year feedback from the students, what they found most difficult, what they found easier. We will be checking on that to make sure, and also having a look to compare the pass rate of this year with other pass rates in previous years.
All right. We do have another caller on the line. We have Tanya from Okahanja. Tanya, good morning and welcome. Sorry, Tanya, could you please switch off your television set or your radio? All right, unfortunately, we're unable to make out what Tanya is saying. We do encourage any contributions. If there are any journalists on the floor, any questions, comments, contributions. In the meantime, it is important for us to talk about how other stakeholders are being engaged in dealing with all the challenges that have been presented by this pandemic. So Ms. Khalid, could you start us off and tell us how the Institute of Open Learning is collaborating with different stakeholders, either within the education sector or beyond, to mitigate the harms that have been posed by COVID-19?
Yes, so our biggest stakeholder is obviously our students, and we make sure that we get feedback from our students on a number of different platforms. I think the WhatsApp line was mentioned, but we also have a call center. We have a SRC, a Student Representative Council in each region. They report back to us. They are also a link between the students and IOL. So we make sure that we have all the feedback from our stakeholders and then from our students. Then we obviously try to look at, best practices and make sure that we implement in accordance with what our students and our regulators prescribe regulations. We make sure that we stick to the regulations. So yes, we try to see what our other stakeholders do, what our students want, what our regulators prescribe, and we stay in contact with our regulators to make sure that they also know the measures and the alternative measures that IOL put in place to keep these students up to date with their studies.
All right, thank you, Ms. Khalid. Now we do have Tanya from Okahanja back on the line. Tanya, good morning and welcome. Please go ahead.
Okay, my question is why are school not using assessment? Like for us, who should actively participate? But since we went for lockdown and everything, we never received any assessment.
Sorry, Tanya, could you please repeat your question?
My question is that some school, okay, my statement is that some school never give assessment. Like for us, I'm a young impression, and I never received any assessment from our school.
Sorry, Tanya, I apologize one last time. Please speak slowly and repeat your question.
Okay, assessment is that.
All right. I'm sorry, Tanya. It seems like we're unable to make out what Tanya is saying. But in the meantime, Mr. Andima, could you please answer the same question that Ms. Khalid just answered, which is how are you collaborating with different stakeholders to mitigate all the consequences that have been presented by COVID-19?
Yeah, apart from the students community and the lecturers, our stakeholders are the industry itself, and we look at how our programs, what the industry requires, so that we produce students that are required in the industry with the skills that are necessary for them to be employed. And our students should be about to be employed anywhere in the southern country or international. So the industry is one of the important stakeholders that we have, and therefore we have got what we call an industry forum. People who are serving on our institutions to have inputs in the curriculum development or in the review of the curriculum, so that we stay relevant to the industry. That is one. And then the other stakeholders that we have is the regulators, and it's important that we are adhering to what the regulations require us to do. So we are in constant interaction with the regulators, including the ministry itself, the line ministry itself. And then our other important stakeholders are the partner universities all over the world, in the US, in the UK, in India, in South Africa. So those are our other external stakeholders. And then our sister campuses, like I've mentioned in the beginning, Eswatini, Lesotho, and the headquarters, Gaborone.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Andima. Now we do have another caller on the line. We have Peter from Karas. Peter, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
Good morning.
Please proceed.
How are you? I'm just want to contribute my view by this morning. Firstly, will be a little bit different with my question. Just congratulations what you are doing, the leader, and the COVID, and everything, with the minister and everything. And my question just in short, the Ministry of Transport, we need to come on board. It's very, very important when it was announced like what you are sitting in the studio is very important to the people to understand. Because it's a little bit really confusing. The buses, we are loading people and they are moving out, and the number of the people, we don't know which capacity now we are falling. If it's better, if the portfolio committee for transport must be informed or must become on board. That is number one. Number two, I need the people to come out, especially the Minister of Labor, like what was doing the Minister of our law enforcement, Itunga, was visiting all regions. It's very important. Even the Minister of Labor also is taking himself to visit region by region to see this situation. Because we have a problem of the retrenchment information. I think this retrenchment is reaching in the office or what? In the last minute also, I have the third one is very important. If the Minister of Tax themselves, the Minister of Finance, they are also must involved to visit by different region by region.
Right. Thank you,
see
Peter.
How the people to be deduct their money when they are going the street.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. I believe Peter's sentiments speak to government as a stakeholder in fighting the consequences of the pandemic. So, Dr. van den Berg, could you talk to us about how Head Start Montessori Training College is going about collaborating with different stakeholders, be those government or not, in ensuring the safe and successful continuation of the implementation of your curriculum?
Thank you. It's a very difficult situation, I think, for government to, I think they are basically playing catch up here. We have a responsibility to the stakeholders who take our graduates on as teachers. So one of the things that we need to do as a college, and what we do, is to spend time collaborating with the different schools, with their needs, with what they want, but at the same time making sure that the quality of what government wants and needs. One of the big issues have been in, I think, all schools, and particularly here in Walvis Bay at the moment, is this issue of getting our children online. And I'm finding it very hard to reconcile the needs of the child with the inability of a lot of the teachers to put their lessons online. Then they don't have the teaching, it's not part of their teaching courses. So this is something that we need to address. We need to address with government, we need to address with the ministry to make sure, hopefully, heaven forbid that this would ever happen again, but it could. And our schools could be closed regularly for different reasons. And our children should never be put in jeopardy. Their education shouldn't be put in jeopardy because their teachers are unable to help them. And there are so many ways and means that we can do this. It doesn't necessitate 40-minute Zoom meetings trying to mimic classrooms. There are ways to make children excited about learning. And that's one of our big responsibilities as higher education institutions, is to make sure that our students become lifelong learners. and that our students are able to contribute to the economic prowess of our country by making sure that our children are always educated. It's not easy. It may necessitate some change in our curriculum, particularly when it comes to teacher training colleges. And it's something that I'm sure will come up as a theme for discussion in the future. But I know from ourselves, from Head Start, that all our trainers are very excited about what they have learned, what they have been able to pass on, what they are sharing with teachers in schools and teachers in other institutions. And it's just been a fantastic learning curve. We're all sort of reeling just a little bit. We're all exhausted. We're working longer hours. We're working harder, but we are learning. And that's what's important, the fact that we are still learning and we can pass that learning on. And I think this is a very important area that we need to address right the way through the education system in Namibia.
Right. Thank you, Dr. van den Berg. Now, something very important that Doctor has mentioned is the fact that this has been a fantastic learning curve. And I see, Dr. Kotze, you're nodding profusely. So perhaps you can talk to us about how the Business School of Excellence, and you've mentioned that this hasn't been a significant change. But could you talk to us about the slight variations and the changes in nuance that you've had to adopt in order to make children excited for, or your students rather, excited for learning during this time?
I must say, to me, our stakeholders, like they all said, are our students. So my next step would be, as head of academics, to find out, to go to my student, to my stakeholder, my most important stakeholder, and say, how can we improve? What can we do to better your situation for you? And the other stakeholders, obviously, are the industry, like the gentleman said. We have, for instance, just one big institution that I can mention, which is one of our biggest contributors, is Namport, because we're on the logistics field. I don't have the issues with practicals and stuff like that. We can work with our students in a distance mode easily. To me, it would be important to see how can we improve? How more can we support you? This was a learning curve, a very big learning curve. But what I can say is in future, I don't envision that we will ever run full-time classes again, face-to-face. This has worked. It's shown to work. There's a lot of cost effectiveness in the way that this was done if we compare it to what we did in the past. So I would say this is the future. The e-learning is the future. Dr. van den Berg says it's really hard work. It's so much more hard work. But the input, I think, is good. No parroting. The student can go back and revisit the video, the PowerPoint, and say, okay, I didn't understand it there, but now I can understand it. So to me, I would now, like in the near future, send out a questionnaire or do something, a survey, to find out from our students and our stakeholders how we can improve and what they were satisfied with what we did.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Kotze. Now, Ms. Khalid, could you talk to us about how training has changed or how it's been enhanced in the face of COVID-19 for teachers and or staff at the Institute of Open Learning?
Yes, thank you. We are currently busy training our tutors, and not only on what they need to do now, but also we started developing our systems immediately to accommodate for online submission of assignments, to accommodate for online marking from tutors. So I think this whole situation taught us a lot, and it made us, think out of the box a little bit. I can use our school-based studies, our practical part, as I mentioned before, for our teaching qualifications. The students will go to schools now, and it's important that they go to schools. Although the students might not all be there, they can go and see what the teachers does now, what they do at schools, and this might happen in the future again, and then they already that step ahead.
Right, thank you, Ms. Colors. Now, Mr. Ndima, could you talk to us about how training has changed for your staff and or your teachers?
Well, as I've indicated, in our case, we have invested a lot in the teachers, and the teachers, before this virus came up, the teachers were already familiar with the use of technology and delivering the lectures on using technologies. What we are doing, however, now is to engage with the ministries of education and probably look at the challenges and the lessons that have come out, which are that we need to retrain. Everywhere, everybody now, everybody must come back on board to retrain yourself, to re-educate yourself on how to do things in the new normal. Because this new normal will require certain skills and so on. And as it has been said, schools here who are producing the learners that are coming to us should be ready to produce learners that are able to come into tertiary institutions, to be admitted at tertiary institutions. They should come with at least basic skills in computing and computers, basic skills in the use of technology, and the teachers should be able to also to produce the materials themselves as well. So we need to rethink and to re-educate where possible, and that investment is required. So I hope the government is looking at it and see how possible they can invest. Maybe even the construction of classrooms will now have to change to provide for how learners must keep a distance in the class, how to bring in that technology in the class. So all those type of things now need to be re-looked at.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ndima. Now we do have a caller on the line. We have Denzel from Henty's Bay. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
I'm just having a few questions related to COVID-19. I'm in the exhibition facility. The recovery that was made yesterday, the man had 3 pending test results, which he was being tested in Windhoek by, and he was amongst positive people the whole time. When he got the news that he recovered, he did not even know. He was not even called. What he told us before he went there is, he said, Dr. Gava from NIP called him and he apologized for the pending result that was delayed. And he tested, we were all tested the 12th, that was the Sunday, and he was told if those results come back positive, he would come back. Now my concern is, how long does NIP results take? Because it's a concern for us, like me, as I know myself, I have tested negative, but I'm still among people who is positive. Now, it does not make sense for the recovery to be 28 while NIP is taking long. Do you understand? So it puts us in a risk. We are losing jobs and everything. And for us in Windhoek, it's very hard. So can you please take up that thing, like for NIP to fasten their results, for our results to come out fast, because it's not making sense. We are on in the 8 recoveries, and the counts are just rising, while pending results are still there, and people are still being tested.
Thank you.
I understand NIP had a backlog of something whereby they did not test or something like that, but
thank you, Denzel.
They put us in a concern that is negative.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, although Denzel's question is not directly one for our panelists here today, it is important for establishing some kind of background in terms of what an institutional response would look like if a student of theirs was supposed to test positive for COVID-19. Perhaps, Dr. van den Berg, you can start us off by answering that question. What is the response of Montessori Head Start Training College if a student were to test positive for COVID-19?
Well, first of all, if a student tested positive, we already have a student who tested positive. She tested last week, Thursday, from Walvis Bay. She's now up in Henties Bay. She's away from her family, and she has 7 children. Our first response was to find out how she and her family were doing. Was there any physical needs that they had? Who was looking after the family? What could we as a college do? We are still in lockdown, so she had not been to the college. Had she been to the college, we'd have immediately constituted a deep cleaning protocol once more. The college has been empty. Everybody's working from home at the moment, so we're not struggling with that area. We are concerned about our students. We're concerned about their mental health. We're concerned about their physical health. We're concerned about their families. And in a situation like this, when they're being taken away from their families and there are children involved, this becomes a very difficult situation for the mother who is now positive and she wasn't displaying any signs or symptoms, but that could still happen. She's concerned, she's worried, she's bothered about that. And I'll be honest with you, at a time like this, the last thing we're concerned about for this particular student or in this particular situation is her studies. They can be picked up later. We can do that. That's not going to be an issue. It's more important that we're concerned about the health and welfare of a student who tests positive in cases like this. So that's our standpoint. We're following all the protocols with the actual college, but it isn't open at the moment. If somebody needs to come to the college for something, they make an appointment and they would come and they do all the sanitizing, signing in, wearing masks, everything that has to be done. And we have obviously the contact book that we could make sure, had this particular student been at the college, then we would have known immediately who the contacts were. We could have passed those over to the team who are tracing the contacts. But fortunately, that didn't happen. So we're just wishing and praying that our student doesn't show signs, and she does have her 2 negative test results. And by the time that she is returned to her family, that her family is still safe and sound.
All right, thank you, Dr. van den Berg. Now we do have a caller on the line. We have Selma. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I understand we are having a panelist from Namkal. Are we? Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I understand we are having a panelist from Namkal.
Sorry, Selma, we don't have a panelist from Nampa here today.
All right.
And from Namcol here today. All right, thank you. We'll just go ahead. Dr. Kotze, could you talk to us about how the Business School of Excellence would respond in an instance where a student were to test positive for COVID-19?
We had a student that came into contact with the initial truck drivers, and he informed me accordingly. I called him and I said, is there anything that we can assist you with? And he said, I have to sit for my examination on that particular day, where I have to be here for testing. I have to drive from Swakopmund for testing, and I arranged with Open Learning Group in South Africa that they an exam opportunity at a later date, which in the end that he used because he did not test positive. But I think the same as Dr. van der Berg explained, if we do get one, obviously we'll start with the student and then extend to the family, but they are remote and they work from home. Those students that do not work from home and have to go into their jobs, well, obviously I'm assuming that their places of work will also attend to them, but I think we will take it one step at a time when we do have a student that might contract it positively.
Right. Now, Mr. Andima, could you talk to us about what response measures you have in the eventuality that a student tests positive for COVID-19?
Fortunately, up to now, we don't have a situation. However, we have got guidelines in place should that happen. So the first thing is to immediately isolate that student or encourage the students to self-quarantine. If it happens on campus, we isolate the students, and we have got facility where we can put such a student. And then the toll-free lines are there for further information. We also have contacts of the parents of the students or an immediate relative, so we will be informing them. So there are some guidelines that are in place for in case it happened on campus. But if it is happening while the students at home, we will be able to counsel the student, to give a counseling program to the student, and to encourage the student to go for testing and to see the doctor and all these things that are necessary.
Thank you, Mr.
But we have got guidelines in place, yes.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Khalid, are the sentiments of the Institute of Open Learning any different from the ones that have been expressed?
I think everything was covered. I mean, obviously we have policies and procedures in place, but what we do have is students have the opportunity to put their studies on hold if they wish to do so. They just need to write a letter to IIL requesting that, and then I think it's also easier for our students because our students. If you study a 3-year course, for instance, you get 6 years to complete the course. So you get double the period. So you basically determine your own pace. You decide when you want to go and write the examinations, when you want to submit your assignments. You just have to finish your qualification within the prescribed period. So I think it's a little bit more flexible with ILL, and our students doesn't really come in for classes, or on the odd occasion they will come in to submit the assignment or examination like they're going to do now.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Now we do have a caller on the line. We have Johanna from Oshikuku. Johanna, good morning and welcome.
Welcome, ma'am. How are you?
Please go ahead.
Okay. This one calls to Ms. Khalid again, since I'm a student at the institution. So my concern is only that maybe if there should be a way, since we are graduates, we are still in the streets with our diplomas and degrees, since now the junior primary phase is full. So my concern is maybe can't they sit with other institutions and need perhaps, so they phase out the junior primary phase for a while, because we have a lot of graduates in that junior primary phase, yet without a job. Yes, they are providing quality education for all, but there should be something to put in place to cut or to stop that junior registration for a while until all the unemployed teachers are catered for. So that's just my concern to her specifically.
All right, Ms.
Maybe
Khalid.
what they can do about it.
All right, thank you, Johanna. Ms. Khalid,
Okay,
please.
thank you. All right.
I'm not sure if I understood correctly whether the student wants us to put the course on hold.
It sounds like Johanna is asking about exploring a measure to first stop and or halt junior registration before the current batch graduates with their qualifications.
Yes.
So I believe that's a question about capacity and how much you're able to handle students given the halt in learning.
Yes, I mean, like I explained in the beginning, I'll register students throughout the year, and students determine their own pace, so they can decide when they want to submit the assignments. If they qualify for the assignment, they don't have to go and sit for that examination immediately. They book on a system, and they decide even if they qualify for 7 subjects and they only want to go and write 3, they can only book for those 3. We are working with working adults. I think it will be unfair towards some students to put a course on hold. We find that quite often that there's a lot of student opinions, and we obviously have to take all of it into consideration and make sure that we implement the best measures, and of course upholding quality assurance. So the student basically have the right to put his studies on hold, and then once they're ready to continue with their studies, they can just inform the Institute of Open Learning, and they will get the rest of their study period to continue.
All right. Now, it is important while we're having this conversation as well to acknowledge, as Dr. Kotze pointed out, that e-learning is not going anywhere. And that speaks to then the question of what are the plans that are in place currently to ensure that everything that's been implemented right now to deal with the pandemic is going to be sustained going forward? How is it going to inform learning in the future? And perhaps, Mr. Ndima, you can start us off with this one. How are the measures that you've currently instituted going to be upheld and or maintained going forward to improve the overall quality of education at your institution?
Well, as an institution, we are ready. As I said, that we have invested a lot already in the technology that we require, and as well as in the staff that we have. What we need to do now is to work with the stakeholder, particularly with the government, to avail facilities such as devices, data, and connectivity issues for students to be able to be ready as well. To be able to deliver their assignments from anywhere they are in the world. So that is now just for government to do and to put these things in place. As far as the university itself is concerned, we are ready and we have been ready, and that's how we have been operating.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ndima. Now we do have a caller on the line. We have Grace from Windhoek. Grace, good morning and welcome.
Yes, good morning.
Please go ahead.
I'm a student also at Hudspeth, and we have some challenges financially. The NASA did not release our private institute. I want to ask the panelists what challenges, what are they going to do about the finances, the outstanding and all that, and the challenges affecting the Thank you.
Right, thank you. So Johanna's question is about the finances, and I do believe that that's something that we've covered, which is the socioeconomic disparities facing students. But perhaps just to reiterate, Dr. van den Berg, you could perhaps take us through this once again, just how institutions generally are going about dealing with socioeconomic disparities that students are facing.
It is quite a difficult situation here in Namibia. We know that the government are want very much for the country to become an educated country, and the economic success of our country depends on that education. However, we have a lot of people who, for various historical, political, socio-economic reasons, do not have the best of qualifications to get into tertiary institutions. And even within our current education society, we have a huge disparity between areas, schooling and education in the different areas. We've all heard of stories of young people coming from one area, having certain qualifications, moving to a different area, and their qualifications have been obviously not the same quality. We have to provide for our students. We have a National Student Fund, but unfortunately the amount of money available to them does not necessarily cover the needs of every student. I was under the impression that it was a loan that these students received, but I've also been told that nobody ever pays it back, which is really sad, because if everybody did, then there would be more money for the student going to the private institutions. We have a lot of young people who are studying in Namibia or trying to study in Namibia. We have probably about half of them are going to full-time universities or colleges, and the other half are going distance online, even taking their education out of the country and going to different universities elsewhere. It's something that needs to be addressed. Head Start is one of the cheaper colleges. We encourage our students to have sponsors. Yes, we do have very few, but we do have a few students who get funded by the student fund. But we have more students who are funded by different NGOs inside and outside of our country. The college itself actually sponsors a number of students for various reasons. And we see that businesses and companies also often help their students to become qualified in different areas, which is really good. But it's not enough.
Right.
It's not enough. It's not enough because higher education institutions have to depend on student fees for existence. We get no government money, and without those student fees coming in, we cannot exist. We are, although in the business of education, we are in a business, and it's hard to exist, and it's hard to put in all the extras that we've had to. For instance, we've got the COVID. We've all had to provide completely different cleaning materials and personal protection, masks and gloves and sanitation, much more than we have been doing previously, although obviously we were still clean. We've had to increase the number of computers, the bandwidth. We've had to put in all sorts of extras, extra cameras, a huge amount of financial investment. And we haven't been able to even get the full amount of money that our students owe us this year. It's a big issue, and it's something that we need to be aware of as a country, that if we want to be an educated country, if we want to use education to financially increase the prowess of Namibia, we're going to have to invest more money into it. And we're going to have to invest it not just in the government institutions. We have to also think about the private ones. We take in half of the students. Half the students in Namibia come to private institutions. There's a reason for that.
Right.
And we need to be assisted, or at least the student, not so much the college, but the student needs to be assisted to be able to do that.
Right. Thank you, Dr. van den Berg. Now, unfortunately, we are nearing the end of our conversation. That was our last caller. That was our last question. So it only makes sense now to ask, what are the major lessons that we've learned during this pandemic, and how are we going to use those to, as institutions and as a collective, improve the quality of education going forward? So, Dr. Kotza, could you start us off with this one? Just what are the lessons that the Business School of Excellence has learned, including your final remarks, anything that you'd like to say as a concluding statement?
I think I've already answered this, but e-learning, like I say, is going to stay. We've learned that there are many more cost-effective ways of working with students than we were doing in the past. Perhaps I can just explain, our majority of our students are working adults as well. So we've got a minimum of young students. The majority are older people who are employed at big institutions like, for instance, Namport. And Damport, for instance, pays for the student to come and study through us because we've got this relationship. And so I can mention quite a other few. And then also BSE has identified some bursary students, which we also fund to finish their studies, which are in the younger group of students. So we are here to support our students and Namibia as much as possible. Like I mentioned just now, we are now going to shift our focus a little bit more to the WNR fields, but BSE is here to stay, and we are adamant that we will give our students the best as in the past.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Kotze. Now, Ms. Khaled, could you talk to us about what lessons you've learned and any concluding remarks?
Thank you, Moderator. What is very important is communication. I think we just realized again how important it is to communicate. I mean, the importance of distance education, I think it was an eye-opener. You need to communicate to your students, and in fact, then you don't have to see your students, and they can still have a pleasant and effective learning experience. So we communicate with our students via SMS on a daily basis. And then we developed our systems and we implemented a lot of things. Sometimes, you tend to get stagnated. And this was, again, a learning curve. And we developed our systems to accommodate for these situations. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Khaled. Now, Mr. Andima, could you talk to us about what you've learned as an institution and any concluding remarks?
First of all, the Convert Center has been managing the information around this pandemic very well, and we have been educating the nation and ourselves as institutions of higher learning. We have learned a lot from this center. One of the lessons that come out is probably we are missing a point here as a government. Maybe we should now realize, and maybe we would have used this opportunity to change the academic calendar to align it with the budgetary process of government, because NASFAF, which is the biggest funding agency, is depending on government for funding. And the government financial year starts on April 1. And then the budgeting process, the discussion in Parliament, takes a longer process before the budget is approved. And during that time, institutions of higher learning shall have lost the time in terms of financing. So I think this could be maybe the opportunity to realign our academic calendar with a financial calendar so that there is a matching program. But that's one of the outcomes that I think has come out from there.
Right.
And then, of course, the much needed investments in education. I think we have been exposed as a country that there is lack of investment within the educational system. I think we have to think about that as well.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Andima. Now, lastly, Dr. van den Berg, could you talk to us about anything that you've learned as an institution, and any concluding remark?
Thank you. We've moved into a completely different age. In history, as we have gone into the different times and the different ages, we've noticed that we never go back. When the industrial age hit and machines took over, we didn't ever go back to being a purely agrarian economy. There is no going back from this. COVID-19 has changed the world. It has changed the way we look at things. It has changed the way we have an education system. All of these kind of things have changed, and there will be no going back. As Dr. Kotze said, e-learning is here to stay. It's easier, it's more convenient. We need to invest more money in that, and we as an institution will be doing that. We'll be investing a lot more money into that area. We already had started. We will just continue We expect you to have a longer time to be able to develop this. And it happened pretty much overnight.
Right.
So going forward, we're going to be looking at everything that we have done. We're going to do personal in-house assessments on how we've done. And we want to make it better. We want to be one of the best.
Right. Thank you, Doctor.
We intend to get there.
Right. Thank you, Dr. van den Berg. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our discussion here today. We were unpacking higher education institutions and their readiness and or preparedness to continue learning in the face of COVID-19. We were joined by our panelists, Dr. Leticia Kotze, who is the head of academics at the Business School of Excellence. We were also joined by Ms. Ilana Kalitz, who is the head at the Institute of Open Learning. We were joined by Mr. Tilenge Andima, who is the Assistant Dean at the Boto Higher Education Institution. And lastly, we were joined by Dr. Lindsay van den Berg, who is the Principal at Head Start Montessori Training College. Our sign language interpreter for today was Erika Ushona. Thank you for watching. From me, your moderator, Bertha Tobias, it's goodbye, have a good morning, and thank you for watching.